Imagine you are the manager of a business, right? Like you run the place.
Yeah, you're the one in charge.
Exactly. But you're being severely sexually harassed like every single day. And the wild part is the abusers aren't your bosses.
They're your customers.
Yes, your customers. And when you finally, gather the courage to record the abuse just to prove it's actually happening, your employer doesn't ban the customers.
Which is what any normal person would expect.
Right. Instead, they fire you for breaking privacy laws. So welcome to today's deep dive.
It's a heavy one today, but so important.
It really is. Because our mission today is to unpack the evolving and honestly heavily misunderstood world of workplace rights in Australia. We're pulling from the service guidelines of the Australian Workplace Discrimination Representatives, the AWDR, which is a non-lawyer workplace relations firm.
Yeah, they've got like over 30 years of experience in this stuff.
They really do. And we're going to explore the mechanics of this deeply revealing, freshly ruled 2026 legal case summary, Eklom v. Marshall.
And this case, it's a profound shift in how we define a safe working environment. We are no longer just looking at the classic scenario of, a toxic boss or bad management.
Right, the typical top-down stuff.
Exactly. We are exploring a groundbreaking expansion of who can actually be held legally and financially responsible for workplace harassment.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to truly grasp the explosive nature of this 2026 case, we first have to understand the baseline of why workers are so vulnerable in the first place.
Yeah, you have to set the stage.
Right. So the AWDR has supported over 16,000 clients over the last 3 decades.
Which is a staggering number of people.
It's huge. That is so many people who needed a third-party representative to just step in and fight for them. Their data highlights this massive systemic issue, which is that everyday employees are simply not fully aware of their rights under the Fair Work Act and equal opportunity laws.
No, they're not. And the landscape of potential disputes is just vast. It's incredibly intimidating for the average person. AWDR handles straightforward, unfair dismissals and toxic workplaces, sure.
Right, the stuff we're sort of familiar with.
But they also deal with incredibly complex matters. Things like general protection disputes and what they call non-genuine redundancy.
Oh, I am going to stop you right there, because those terms are a perfect example of the problem. What exactly is a non-genuine redundancy or a general protection dispute?
It sounds like legal word salad, right?
Totally. Because navigating the Fair Work Act feels a bit like, I don't know, playing a high-stakes board game where only the employer is allowed to read the rule book.
That is actually a great way to put it. So to put it simply, a non-genuine redundancy is a classic loophole.
Yeah. Okay.
It happens when a company claims your specific role is being eliminated due to restructuring. So they let you go.
And then what?
Well, then, like a week later, they quietly hire someone else to do your exact job under a slightly different title.
Oh, wow. So it's just a way to fire someone without cause.
Basically, yeah. And a general protection dispute, that usually involves an employee being punished, like having their shifts cut, or being demoted simply because they exercise a legal workplace right.
Like what kind of right?
Like asking for their correct overtime pay, for example.
Oh, I see. That makes perfect sense when you explain it like that. But with so much information available online in 2026, it is just wild to me that workers are still entirely in the dark about these critical distinctions when it actually happens to them.
Well, what's fascinating here is the sheer intimidation factor baked into corporate legal structures. The legal language used in employment contracts, enterprise agreements, and modern awards, it is deliberately dense.
Right. It's not meant to be read by the average person.
Exactly. When an employer cites a specific clause to justify a dismissal, the average worker just doesn't have the technical expertise to challenge it in real time.
They just panic.
Yeah, they naturally assume the company's HR department is this ultimate objective authority on what is legal.
Which makes total sense why the AWDR warns that HR managers can become really coercive in these situations because, HR inherently exists to protect the company's liability.
Not the employee's well-being.
Exactly. If an employee doesn't know the specific statutory provisions protecting them, they don't even know they have a lever to pull.
And that inherent complexity and power imbalance, it creates a profound chilling effect. People just suffer in silence.
Yeah.
And this sets the stage for why understanding the specific modern mechanics of employment law is so critical. Because when you do know the rules, the entire power dynamic flips.
It totally flips. And that power imbalance is exactly why workers suffer in silence. They think the law only protects them from the person signing their paycheck.
Right.
But what happens when the person terrorizing you isn't your boss, but a customer bringing in thousands of dollars a week?
Yeah, that's where things get really messy.
Let's introduce the players in our case study today. Samuel Eklom was working as a storage consultant for a storage king in Queensland, starting back in September 2023. Over time, his role essentially expanded into a full site manager. He was handling customer service, marketing, banking, maintenance. He was completely overwhelmed.
Do the job of 3 people, basically.
Basically, yeah.
And then we have the harassers. Jacob Marshall, who was actually the facility's very first customer, but he was later hired as an independent contractor to do, like, cleaning and site maintenance.
Oh, right. So he's a contractor.
Yeah. And then Troy Mitchell, a regular high-volume customer. And because Mitchell did so much business with the facility, Eklom was directly responsible for managing his account.
So he couldn't just avoid the guy.
Not at all. These 2 men became a consistent, inescapable feature of Eklom's daily work life.
And the harassment they inflicted on Eklom was, as the court later called it, very serious. From late 2024 into 2025, Marshall and Mitchell routinely targeted Eklom with explicit, homophobic, and highly sexualized abuse.
It was relentless.
They constantly called him the gay boy and the storage queen. The court noted that the 2 men would just bounce off each other, making Eklom the butt of the joke. It became almost like a game for them.
Yeah, and the specific details of the abuse are incredibly confronting, but we really have to look at them to understand the severity of the hostile environment they were creating.
Absolutely, and the psychological toll it took. The source material does not shy away from it. In January 2025, Mitchell joked about Eklom getting tied up and left in a shed, and Marshall replied he was probably used to it.
Just awful.
And when Eklom was bending over to clean the shed, Mitchell asked if he was practicing for something, with Marshall smirking and adding, "Yes, we know you like it that way."
And it went far beyond just verbal mockery, too. The environment became physically intimidating. Like Marshall would routinely shove and bump into Eklom, brushing it off as just joking around.
Classic bully behavior. Marshall even remarked that someone was getting pounded from behind in one of the sheds and looked at Eklom saying he is probably used to it. They explicitly talked about him getting raped in the shed.
It's sickening.
And the hostility even bled into his personal life, like outside of work hours. In May 2025, Eklom sent a standard business text message to Mitchell just saying, "Hey," and Mitchell replied, "I'm at home, you poof."
Eklom described the environment as quite harrowing. It created this sense of total isolation and degradation, especially because it was always 2 against 1.
Right.
It is the textbook definition of a hostile, suffocating work environment.
Wait, let me challenge that for a second, though, because Eklom is the site manager.
Yeah.
We usually think of harassment flowing top down from an authority figure, like from a boss who holds your paycheck hostage. How can we talk about a power imbalance when the guy being harassed is the one running the facility? How is a manager powerless against a contractor and a customer?
That's a really good question. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at financial leverage rather than just, like, the organizational chart.
Right.
Eklom may have been the manager, but Mitchell was a high-volume client bringing significant revenue into the business.
Right. He's paying the bills.
Exactly. There is an unspoken massive pressure in retail and service industries to just keep the big spenders happy. Eklom's performance metrics, and ultimately his job security, were totally tied to retaining customers like Mitchell.
So the customer weaponizes their spending power to behave however they want, assuming the manager won't risk losing the account.
Precisely. And this is where the genius of modern employment law comes into play. Enter Section 527D of the Fair Work Act, 2009.
Okay, I love a good section number.
Right. This relatively new provision fundamentally changes the game. It explicitly prohibits sexual harassment in connection with work.
In connection with work. That phrasing feels incredibly deliberate, separating it from just, like, at the workplace.
Oh, it's entirely deliberate. And its implications are massive across every industry. It basically means the statutory protection extends to any worker within a business ecosystem.
Okay.
The legal identity or the formal employment status of the abuser is entirely immaterial.
Wait, really? Doesn't matter who they are?
It does not matter. If
Yeah.
they are a CEO, a peer, an independent contractor, an Uber passenger, or a paying customer at a restaurant. If the harassment happens in connection with your employment, they are legally liable.
Wow. So Eklom has this new legal protection, Section 527D, covering him against third parties. Naturally, you would assume the company steps in, enforces it, and protects their manager from this abuse.
You would hope so. But this is where we transition into the really dark reality of corporate self-preservation and liability management.
Yeah, because Eklom actually gathered the courage to lodge a formal internal complaint. He even provided a secret audio recording as absolute proof of the horrific things these men were saying.
He had them dead to rights.
He did, and Storage King completely ignored the harassment. Instead of banning the customer or firing the contractor, management turned the issue back on Eklom.
Which is just wild.
They accused him of breaching the Invasion of Privacy Act 1971 in Queensland for making the secret recording.
It is a devastating, but unfortunately, really common deflection tactic. When faced with a complex liability issue like a high-paying customer harassing staff, the company chose to attack the credibility and the methods of the victim.
Instead of looking in the mirror.
Exactly. Rather than address their own systemic failure to provide a safe workplace.
It is honestly like punishing an employee for pulling the fire alarm while the building is actively burning down around them just because they pulled the lever too hard.
That's a perfect analogy.
And the fallout was immediate. Storage King formed a negative view of his performance. Eklom took personal leave to cope with diagnosed anxiety and depressive disorder with an onset date directly aligning with the timeline of the harassment.
No surprise there.
And while he was on leave dealing with the psychological fallout of their inaction, they dismissed him.
The cruelty of terminating an employee while they are on medical leave for a psychological injury sustained on the company's own property, it's just profound.
It's awful. So Eklom takes action. He files an application in the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia. Initially, his lawsuit included his employer, Storage King, asserting the company breached industrial laws.
Right, which makes sense.
But here is the massive legal pivot. Once Storage King filed a defense proving that Marshall and Mitchell were not actual employees on their payroll, Eklom quickly discontinued his legal action against the business. He dropped them from the suit entirely.
Yeah, that's a huge shift.
Is it common to abandon the fight against the employer midstream like that? If the harassment happened on their property, shouldn't they still be responsible?
It highlights the extreme tactical complexity of navigating workplace rights. Yes, the harassment happened on site, but proving vicarious liability, meaning making a company financially responsible for the rogue actions of non-employees, is a massive, drawn-out legal battle.
I can imagine.
It requires proving the company knew, failed to act reasonably, and directly caused the economic loss. Storage King likely had a very well-funded legal team ready to drag that out for years on procedural technicalities.
Just bleed him dry with legal fees.
Exactly.
So instead of fighting a war of attrition against a corporate giant, Eklom's team pivots.
Exactly. The legal strategy became this laser-focused strike. By utilizing Section 527D, Eklom didn't need to prove corporate negligence. He could hold the individuals directly, personally accountable for the psychological harm they personally inflicted.
Oh, that's brilliant.
He bypassed the corporate shield entirely.
Eklom suffered significant economic loss from losing his job, but he couldn't legally recover that lost income from Marshall and Mitchell because Storage King was the entity that actually made the decision to fire him.
Right. They pulled the trigger on the employment.
Yeah. He had to target the two men purely for the psychological damage they caused. But what is truly baffling, however, is how the two men responded to being sued in federal court.
Oh, they ghosted the federal government.
They completely ignored the litigation. Like, they were served with court documents, they failed to participate in directions hearings, they failed to file any defense. It is an astonishing level of arrogance.
It speaks to a profound sense of entitlement. They genuinely believed the old rules applied.
Right.
They thought that because they didn't work for Eklom's company, the rules of the workplace simply did not apply to them. They thought they were untouchable third parties.
Well, the federal court heavily disagreed. Let's look at the verdict and what happens when you decide to ignore a federal judge. In March 2026, the court ruled in Eklom's favor, finding both men in default and in clear breach of Section 527D.
And the court made a few vital clarifications during the ruling, too. First, they stated that Eklom's actual sexual orientation was entirely irrelevant to the case.
Which is an important distinction.
Huge. The defense couldn't argue that it was, like, harmless banter or that it didn't apply because of how he identified. The only fact that mattered legally was the conduct itself. and that he suffered psychological injury because of it.
And to explain the reach of Section 527D, the court used a really brilliant, simple analogy. They said, imagine a restaurant patron sexually harassing a waitress. The patron is liable because the abuse occurs in connection with her being a worker. It is that straightforward.
Yeah.
The ecosystem of the business protects the worker from anyone who steps inside it. So let's talk numbers. The court ordered Marshall and Mitchell to pay Eklom $90,000 in compensation for psychological harm.
But the court didn't stop there. And this raises a really crucial point about the function of civil law. Beyond just compensating the victim to make them whole, the law must actively act as a deterrent to society.
Crucially, yes. The court utilized Section 546 of the Fair Work Act to apply pecuniary penalties. The judge noted that these men showed zero remorse and refused to even engage with the legal system.
Right, by ghosting them.
Exactly. So the court actually set the penalties intentionally higher than what Eklom's own legal team had originally asked for.
Wow.
They fined them $13,000 each. The court explicitly stated that civil penalties must carry a sufficient sting or burden to deter others from acting in such an abhorrent way.
A sting or burden. The court is sending a very public, very painful financial message.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in traditional harassment cases, if there is no employment power imbalance, like if a boss isn't leveraging a paycheck over a subordinate, that fact usually mitigates the penalty. But here, their sheer lack of remorse forced the court to ensure the financial pain was severe enough to make headlines and change public behavior.
It definitely made headlines. Total payout, $116,000, ordered to be paid directly to Eklom within 60 days.
Good.
And I want you, listening right now, to think about your own workplace.
Yeah.
The independent contractors who come in to clean the office, the vendors who restock the supplies, or that high-volume client who thinks they own the place because they spend a lot of money. Did you realize they are personally, financially bound by these exact same laws?
This case completely shatters the old, not my employee, not my problem defense. It puts every single customer, client, and contractor in Australia on notice.
Everyone is on notice now.
If you step into someone else's workplace and create a hostile environment, you can and will be held directly, personally liable for the psychological damage you inflict. Your status as a third party will not save you from a massive financial sting.
It is a totally new era of accountability. So what does this all mean? Let's summarize the incredible evolution we've explored today.
Yeah, let's bring it all together.
The Fair Work Act is no longer just a shield against bad bosses or malicious HR departments. It has evolved into a comprehensive 360-degree ecosystem of protection. It is designed to ensure every worker's fundamental right to a safe environment against anyone they interact with in connection with their job.
It places a firm boundary around the worker. Whether you are dealing with a toxic colleague, a dismissive manager, or an abusive regular customer, the law now recognizes that the harm is real and the liability is inescapable.
And as the AWDR emphasizes, knowing these specific rights and legal levers is the first and most critical step. You don't have to navigate the intimidation of corporate legal structures blindly. But as we wrap up, there is one final lingering tension from our sources today that is just really hard to shake.
Oh, about the privacy stuff.
Yeah. We mentioned that Eklom was reprimanded and ultimately dismissed by his employer for secretly recording his abusers. They claimed he breached the Invasion of Privacy Act. Now, looking at the AWDR's recent blog headlines, they mention a 2026 case where tech workers were dismissed specifically for surveilling their employers.
It highlights a highly precarious tightrope for modern workers trying to build a case.
It really does. It leaves us with a provocative question for you to mull over. Where exactly is the line drawn in 2026 between legally gathering evidence to protect yourself from severe harassment and unlawfully violating workplace privacy laws?
It's a terrifying catch-22.
It is. If you desperately need proof to stop the abuse, but capturing that proof gets you fired by the very company supposed to protect you, how does a worker truly stay safe? Keep questioning the world around you, and remember that flowchart of power isn't as rigid as they want you to believe. Until next time.